And since it's been a little bit of time, I thought I would remind everyone of the reason why these sessions are called crucible of practice and their purpose. According to the dictionary, a crucible is a situation in which different elements interact, leading to the creation of something new. And I really love that because these sessions are designed to spark commentary and inspire ideas that can be applied across GLR communities and engage the network in discussions about models happening in practice. So essentially, in the crucible of practice, you and your practice in your communities are the different elements, and these elements or practices can inspire the creation of something new or replication in other communities. So, and today we have the excellent chance to explore one of GLR's big priorities, which is the idea that when communities are committed to creating learning opportunities in everyday places and spaces, um, young children and their parents get the chance to engage with literacy and learning prompts and activities in the spaces where they are already spending time, which is the 80% of a child's waking hours that are not in school. As you can see in this graphic, there is a broad ecosystem supporting out of school time learning, and we are excited to learn from the communities we have featured today and all of you who are on the call today about how this plays out in your neighborhoods. And I'm especially and personally excited because today's session is an important confluence of two projects I have the privilege of working on in my consulting practice. I've worked with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading off and on for over 10 years. And over the past 3 years, I've had this awesome opportunity to work with the Learning Agenda and the William Penn Foundation to facilitate a community of practice involving practitioners and researchers who are implementing and evaluating literacy-rich environments in playful and informal learning settings across Philadelphia. This awesome group of thought leaders produced a new publication reflecting their work. I've already posted it in the chat, called Philadelphia as a Literacy-Rich Environment, Unlocking Potential and Creating Change, which highlights what they found as the 5 emerging conditions for citywide approaches to creating and scaling literacy-rich environments, along with 5 recommendations for funders and other key decision makers to ensure that literacy-rich environments are created and scaled in ways that render them an essential part of a comprehensive citywide solution to improving literacy. In today's discussion, we will hear from our Philly leaders and unpack what is in this publication, featuring the great work across their city. And then we also get to hear from our leaders in Charlotte and Milwaukee about how their citywide and countywide efforts are similar and different from what is happening in Philadelphia. We also get to hear from Amanda Charles of the William Penn Foundation about the vital funder role in supporting these citywide efforts. And importantly, we will wrap up with time for a peer exchange where all of you will have the chance to share the ways in which you are expanding literacy-rich environments across your neighborhoods and what the 5 conditions look like in your communities. And so now I'm honored to welcome and briefly introduce our esteemed panelists with us today. I've already posted their full bios linked in the chat, so I'm just previewing who we have with us. So first, I'm so happy to introduce my good colleague, Priscilla Little, who co-facilitated the Philadelphia Community of Practice with me and was the lead writer on the brief, or I should say, she edited all of the words and ideas developed by members of the community. Priscilla is a youth development evaluation strategy consultant who has participated in field building efforts and supporting young people's social, emotional, academic, and cognitive development. Jenny Bagoni, you all probably know her, is someone who many of you know, again, as I said, from our previous sessions. She is Chief of Community Engagement and Public Programming with the Free Library of Philadelphia, where she oversees Read by Fourth, a citywide effort of 50 organizations, public and private, large and small, aiming to majorly increase the number of students in Philadelphia entering the 4th grade at reading level. Amanda Charles is Program Officer, Children and Families at the William Penn Foundation, where she manages grant making related to advancing out of school time learning and caregiver support objectives. Previously, Amanda worked as a child care specialist with the Arlington County government in Virginia, balancing management of child care facilities while working collaboratively to improve program quality. Emily Nanny is a Associate Director of Programs at Charlotte Mecklenburg Library in North Carolina, and she's been with the library for over 20 years. She is most passionate about public libraries and exceptional customer service for all. She's also passionate about hard work and gratitude in all things, as well as positivity. Rachel Tadaro is the City of Philadelphia's Office of Children and Families Playful Learning Fellow. How cool. Rachel specializes in integrating playful learning principles into the city's public programming and built environment projects. She comes to the City of Philadelphia after a 3-year postdoctoral research fellowship at Temple Infant and Child Laboratory, where she led evaluations of citywide playful learning interventions. Dia Wright has been the director of the City of Milwaukee's Office of Early Childhood Initiatives since its inception in November 2018. Under her leadership, OECI has helped raise awareness around the importance of early reading and talking to children, emphasizing birth to age 3. What a powerhouse group. Welcome to all of you. We look forward to engaging with you and learning from you. And I'm now excited to turn it over to Priscilla to get the conversation going.
Thank you, Emily, for that warm introduction. I'm delighted to be moderating this session today, and I'm very eager to get to our panelists. But before we do, I just want to give you an overview of how the brief was created and what it contains. Around 2015, the William Penn Foundation began investing in its Literacy Rich Environments initiative with the goal that all Philadelphia families would live in neighborhoods with interactive elements and installations such as signage at bus stops, literacy-focused playgrounds, as well as programs for children ages birth to 8 that build literacy and language skills through playful learning. Central to the Literacy Rich Environments initiative was a commitment to evaluation and peer learning. So in 2022, the foundation engaged the Learning Agenda, where Emily and I both collaborate, to facilitate a community of practice to engage the researchers, evaluators, and practitioners funded as part of the William Penn's portfolio to share strategies and questions emerging from their work and to create a body of evidence in support of literacy-rich environments for young people. Entering its 3rd year, the partners participating in the community of practice expressed interest in sharing their insights on what they had learned about the environmental conditions that were emerging in Philadelphia as central to their efforts to create and scale literacy-rich environments across the city. Through a collaborative and iterative process, they created the brief that Emily shared in the chat so that funders and other key decision makers could benefit from what they learned. It's intended to form decision makers that result in inform decisions that will result in taking a more systemic, citywide approach to creating, funding, and scaling literacy-rich environments. On this slide, the brief shows that the brief has 4 sections: an overview of the brief itself, a data-driven rationale for investing in literacy-rich environments in Philadelphia, the 5 emergent conditions for citywide approaches to creating and scaling literacy-rich environments, and then recommendations on what funders and other key decision makers can do. So much is known about how to create specific programs and settings that promote literacy. We weren't trying to recreate that wheel, but creating and scaling literacy-rich environments across the city is a complex process that becomes possible with stable funding for sure, but it involves much more in terms of community buy-in and collaborative leadership. Based on the experiences of the members of the community of practice, it requires recognizing and encouraging all the places and spaces across the city where caregivers and their children tend to gravitate to be part of an ecosystem of literacy-rich environments, co-created with community members and seeking to support a broad range of outcomes that collectively support improved literacy. It's important to underscore that these 5 conditions are interrelated and interdependent. For example, an inclusive ecosystem will consist of diverse literacy-rich environments, each with its own set of outcomes that reflect the ultimate goal of improved literacy. But to fully unpack each condition, the brief describes them separately and draws on many illustrative examples from the literacy-rich environment partners in Philadelphia. Collectively, creating these 5 conditions calls on funders to rethink traditional approaches to grant making, invest in community-centered evaluation, take a systems perspective to the work, understand the value of play, and embrace a broad theory of change. So with that as a prelude, we're going to jump right into our panel conversations. As Emily noted, we will start with 2 members of the community of practice who will share their insights on the work in Philadelphia. And then we will zoom out to our colleagues in Charlotte and Milwaukee to talk about how they are working to create literacy-rich environments in their communities. So we're going to start with Jenny Bogoni. And I'll wait till she comes on screen. There we go.
Hi.
Jenny, we're going to begin with you. We know that you've been on many GLR webinars before, and it's always helpful to be reminded of how your local GLR coalition, Read by Fourth, works. Can you please tell us about your work and how you were serving as a backbone and catalyst for the expansion of literacy-rich environments citywide?
Sure. First, thank you and hello, Priscilla, and hello to everybody on the call. It is always a pleasure to do these webinars, and it is just a joy to see all the familiar names in the chat. So welcome to all of you. I am so glad to be in this work with each and every one of you. So as Priscilla said, some of you have heard me do this spiel before, so I'm going to be quick, but I also know there are some new names and faces. So Read by Fourth is Philadelphia's campaign for grade level reading. And we call ourselves Philadelphia's early literacy movement. And we do that intentionally because of the scale of the city of Philadelphia. We are large enough that it is impossible for us to simply identify a few programs that we need to implement in order to affect the change that we need to affect. We need to be thinking at a system scale in order to make the change at the population level that we want to make. And so it really is about a movement of engaging all aspects of our community to affect that change. If you go to the next slide. Right now in Philadelphia, approximately 68% of our children are not reading on grade level. And this is, of course, despite the fact that we've been doing this work for 9 years now. That is more or less where we were when we started 9 years ago. But that is not to say that we haven't had impact. We have had a lot of impact, and we were making some significant beginnings of change right before the pandemic. And then, like many communities, we saw a big backslide during the pandemic years, and we are now coming out of it. One of the ways that Philadelphia has made change is in the ways we have affected outcomes in various aspects of our campaign, which I'll get to in a moment. But one of the things that we are quite proud about, and one of the reasons we believe that the investment at a systems level across the whole city has been impactful, is that last year, Stanford and Harvard came out with a report that said Philadelphia was the second fastest recovering large urban school district in the country post-pandemic. And we believe that is really because of the ways we have strengthened our early literacy ecosystem through a collaborative approach across our entire city. So let me tell you a little bit about that. If you go to the next slide. Sorry, I skipped this slide. This is our, we can be hopeful. Yes, the problem is large, but we know we can make impact. So if you go to this slide, thank you. This is our slide about how we are making impact and how we are organized. So we are a coalition of more than 100 partner organizations that some are very small, some are very large, and they really do represent all sectors of our city. We organize all those partners into various bodies of work. There is a group of partners that are really working on what we call the Empowered Families body of work. In this body of work, we have two working groups. One is looking at resources that families need in order to be the best and first teachers of their children, as well as a working group that's really looking at how we diversify books that families have access to in their home libraries for their children. The next body of work we call our Just Systems. This is the body of work where partners gather when they want to talk about what does reading instruction look like inside schools? How are we supporting early childhood centers? What are we doing with the departments of rec and with libraries, with the health department? How are all those publicly funded systems getting organized to better support literacy outcomes? And then where this body of work fits, and you'll notice these really are Venn diagrams, and any one of our strategies really does have aspects of all of them in it. But the body of work we're talking about today is really in the community mobilization area. And in this area, what we've been focused on is how can we transform our communities into learning-rich environments? Where can we make sure that learning is catalyzed in everyday places and spaces, to use some language that we hear in other elements of the national campaign? And how are we making sure that we are activating individuals to be community literacy advocates? And I think I saw at least one or two names of some of our reading captains here on the call today. We couldn't do this work without them. So our partners are all come to us from all aspects of Philadelphia, and then they join working groups that advance these various strategies. So in the strategies related to activated communities, Rachel Todaro at the City of Philadelphia has really been one of our key partners and has been the person who has, from the city level, really driven the organization of how we begin to think about transforming our communities. So I'm going to pass it over to Rachel right now to tell you more about what that looks like.
Thank you so much, Jenny. That was really helpful. Rachel, your role, as Emily said, is as the Playful Learning Fellow for the City of Philadelphia, which parenthetically, I think every city needs one. I'd love to know how we could scale that alone. But can you talk about your work, what it entails, how you collaborate across, just sort of soup to nuts, what are you doing? And how are you working with other non-education focused city agencies? What programs have you looked at that may, demonstrate an increase in literacy or interest? Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much, Priscilla. It's great to see you again, and thank you everybody tuning in here. Just a little FYI, I have a black screen, so I can't see if my slides are up, but I do have my phone handy, so I know what slides are saying. So if we need to move forward with them, but I'd love to answer this question first. First, as the Playful Learning Fellow at the Office of Children and Families, specifically in the Early Childhood Education Department, where I sit beneath the Chief of Early Childhood Education, I'm known to be a little bit of a disruptor. There's not, in a good way, there's not really anybody like this role as of yet, and I've learned a lot along the way. Part of my role is to really maintain the buy-in of playful learning at OCF departments that are already very much doing it, like the Free Library of Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Parks and Recreation, out of school time. But also my second role is to really bring playful learning to external city agencies, such as Rebuild, which is an agency that reinvests in different public spaces like parks, rec centers, etc. And my work really falls in two buckets: playful learning programming and professional development. And we'll see this in Parks and Rec programming or library programming, as well as pre-K and early childhood centers, and bringing playful learning principles into public space projects. So built environment projects, are there games? Are there story trails? Are there moments and opportunities where children and families can practice reading or practice letter recognition or practice math skills or number sense skills, all through playful learning? And bringing the science of learning into these spaces. In my introduction, I was introduced as having done a postdoctoral fellowship at Temple University. That's true. I'm a trained cognitive and educational psychologist. So I really get to think about how to enhance environments for child-centered designs. And it's been wonderful. And in terms of those non-educational focused agencies, I've gotten to do professional development series with Rebuild, again, who is that group that invests in the disinvested spaces of Philadelphia, the spaces that really need investment most for the public. The Philadelphia Housing Authority, working with them to bring playful learning and literacy-focused enhancements to Ridge Avenue in the North Philly area, the Sharswood neighborhood in particular. I'm working with the Department of Housing and Community Development up there. I'm talking a lot with the Art Commission and getting them on board with, hey, what about some playful learning in this design? A lot of public space projects have to go through the Art Commission. And I'm also in a lot of conversations with Otis, which is the Department of Transportation here in Philadelphia, about bringing playful learning to the streets and increasing street safety practices and curriculum for the children and families in the areas, so that we can make Vision Zero, or the vision of zero accidents and injuries happening, more fruitful. So I know that was long-winded. I'm just very passionate about the work, and I hope I answered the question effectively.
Yes, thank you. That was a really good intro. And now what I want to do is really think about the 5 emergent conditions that were in the brief. And I know we have a slide there that maybe slide 18. I think we're a little bit off in the deck. And really have you both reflect on how that's playing out in the work you're doing. I mean, Jenny, from your perspective, and then again from Rachel, sort of if we go to slide 18, these are the conditions, and you'll see, another Venn diagram. It's all related and interconnected. But Jenny, I'm going to talk with you, and I know you've been thinking about sort of how this is playing out in the work you're doing and what you're seeing. So you have an example you want to share. I think we're on slide 20 now. Jenny, does that look right to you?
Yeah, that does. Yeah, go back one slide.
Great, thank you.
So thank you so much. I appreciate that overview. And Rachel, I always love hearing you talk about how you're leading the work across multiple city departments. That is no easy task. So thank you for the work you're doing. So Read by Fourth, similarly, Rachel and the City of Philadelphia is one of our core partners in the work that we are doing citywide. So this one body of our work, where I talked about mobilizing communities, we were really led by this essential question: how can we design a city where reading is everywhere? And what you see on this slide is just a collage of various examples of different projects we've done over the years that help to answer that question, whether it be putting reading captains in communities or putting book nooks, these bookshelves in the bottom left, in laundromats and barbershops. One Martin Luther King Day, we built 150 book nooks in one day and dispersed them across the city. Or transforming our public transportation hubs into places where there are communication prompts to get families chatting with their children while in transit. Or these installations in our parks that are in multiple languages that again engage families in conversation. But the project I wanted to lift up today is on the next slide, and this is our Philly ABCs project. So this project is one that I find really exciting because what it does is it took a group of partners together. We identified a smaller metric that we wanted to impact, and then we worked collaboratively to create a project that multiple partners could implement in different ways in different areas of the city at once. So the metric we were trying to implement or trying to impact was alphabet knowledge. So we know that that is a core component to ultimately becoming a proficient reader, but we also knew that it was a place where many of our children were not meeting the benchmarks. We had kindergartners entering kindergarten really with a deficient understanding of the alphabet. We then spent some time understanding what alphabet knowledge is, really understanding that it's about knowing your letter names, letter shapes, and letter sounds, and how those things all work together. We then decided what we wanted to do was create resources that children and families could use that would support that skill development in a way that was culturally relevant to Philadelphia, that centered joy and centered a family's love for their children, and could really be a wonderful experiential learning for all of our families. And so the result was the Philadelphia specific alphabet poster. And so we started with a poster, one piece of paper with all the letters on the page. And each letter was represented by one of the graphics that you kind of see on each of these individualized banners. And they're all very Philadelphia specific. The close-up photograph here doesn't show it well, but if you know Philadelphia, P is for pretzel, M is for our murals, L is for our love statue, G is for Gritty, who's our mascot for the Flyers. So it's very Philadelphia specific, and the images all represent our city. We then broke down those graphics into these individualized banners. And as you can see, these are 2 feet by 3 feet banners. If you put them out to put the whole alphabet there, you can see that it can really transform a chain link fence around any rec center and really make the space much more colorful and engaging for the summer. And so we did that. We put these in the first summer in 14 rec centers all across North Philadelphia. So if you were a child in North Philadelphia and went to the park that summer, you were for sure bumping into these posters during your summer. We also that summer then worked with the Office of Department of Health and Vital Statistics and identified families that had children that would be rising kindergartners based on the date of their birth. And we did a direct mail campaign, 3 different postcards to those families over the summer with specific information about what this skill is and ways that they could go to their rec center, engage with these posters, and build this skill with their children. We also worked with some partners to present a training to families and other partners who handed out tote bags with resources for, again, games you could do at home. The project was hugely successful in that one area of Philadelphia. We really did just blanket families and physical areas with this information and with this transformation. And then we expanded this past summer to different neighborhoods, but also then kind of loosened up the rules of engagement and made the resources available to any partner in Philadelphia. So if a partner had use for just the alphabet posters or the direct mailing or the banners, they could reach out and use those in their communities the way they wanted to. So this is the way that we're trying to think about creating shared resources that a community can use in the way that's appropriate for their communities and really have population level impact rather than just one place-based project. I hope that was helpful.
Yes, thank you. It was very helpful. I appreciate that. And Rachel, we're going to turn to you with sort of the same, help us bring the concepts of the brief to life and the work that you're doing in Philadelphia. And did you want us to bring up some of the slides that you
Yes, I
had shared?
can.
Yeah.
That would be lovely. I'm able to see them again. I'm not sure what was happening with my screen earlier. I just
Terrific.
wanted to share a few examples of what the city of Philadelphia, some of our departments and agencies have been doing
And
with
Rachel, should we
playful
go
learning.
back to number 13 or 14? Where would you like where would you like us to start?
Oh, right here is fine. Thank you so
Perfect.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, the first slide was really me trying to reinforce to the programmers and project leaders that we really do have roles and responsibilities to design activities and public spaces that serve our children and families and help enhance their education and literacy skills, especially through play. It's what kids, they have a proclivity for, and it really brings families out. But along with that, these slides are examples, excuse me, of some of the work the city groups have completed and that are in progress. This is Parks and Rec, Kaboom, Too Small to Fail, and Read by Fourth Story trails that are at 5 different parks. My favorite one that I've seen so far is at Marconi Park, and that's right down Broad Street in South Philly, a route that a lot of families take walking to and back from school, where they get to read stories together along these panels. Next slide, please. And it just serves as a really good example of bringing literacy to life where kids and families already are, which is a core, which is one of the conditions that is super important throughout the brief. This example of the Free Library of Philadelphia, Logan Library in the Logan neighborhood, has this tree trunk or the nest tree. It's really cool. It provides a really cool little space for kids to practice letters, reading inside this nook, a space that's just for them. It's bringing activity and playfulness into the library. It's not just be quiet and read. It's really transforming this library space. And I also wanted to showcase Mural Arts' work on the stair steps. And they're a great group that has really embraced playful learning and are partnering with us to make playful learning murals happen at the 56th Street Gateway. So fingers crossed all that goes through. Next slide. This is a rebuild project that's at Blanche A. Nixon Library. It's a little behind, but they have made playful learning pods for our earliest learners that include memory alphabet games, races, matching games, all of this very much has the community's input in it and really exalts and brings forth the community and the culture and really listening to what they're saying and what they want to see. Please slide. You can next slide. I'm just trying to be mindful of time. And this is Project Hopeful. This is the homeless shelters here in Philadelphia go by Hopeful, where playful learning I Spy murals and wayfinding have been placed at, I believe, more than 4 on a list of, I believe, more than 10 so far, where they bring joy and play and education to children and families that are kind of in between housing, and these moments can spark joy and bring collaboration and learning and educational opportunities to families during this time. So making sure that we address different communities and different types of families in different situations and bringing play to all. It's very much part of the vision. And I think that might be my last slide.
It is, and thank you, Rachel and Jenny, very much for really grounding the work in Philadelphia. I'm seeing some questions coming in the question and answer. So while your colleagues from other cities are going to share, you might want to take a peek at what those questions are, because when we come back again after our colleagues speak, we're going to be having a Q&A. So I want to just switch now to the work in Charlotte and Milwaukee. There are also incredible examples of work related to creating citywide literacy-rich environments and making learning happen in everyday places and spaces. Emily, I'd like to begin with you, and we'll give a second to transition into you. There she is. And begin with you and your role in the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library. Please tell us about the critical role the library is playing and what your city and your county's literacy-rich environments look like.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone, and welcome this afternoon, at least afternoon, in Charlotte Mecklenburg Library. We work closely with Read Charlotte as well, one of our partners who works strongly with the campaign for grade level reading. They came to town in 2015 to advance reading by third grade from 39% to 80%. So we're really fortunate to work with them. If you'll move to the next slide, I'll share about some of the ways we're reaching out to our community to find ways to incorporate literacy. So first, our story walks. We have 5 parks throughout Mecklenburg County that have story walks. In 2017, we received a grant from our state library to set up story walks. And many of you may be familiar, but story walks are an opportunity for children and families to enjoy reading and outdoor spaces at the same time. Story walk is literally taking apart a picture book, placing it in a weatherproof protected frame in an outdoor space so that children and families can enjoy books in an outdoor setting. We do work closely with Read Charlotte on an active reading practice, and that is asking questions, building vocabulary, and connecting to the child's world when you're reading together with a child. So you'll notice on each panel of our story walks, there's a couple displayed in the pictures. We do ask active reading questions. So after the family reads together that page from the book, then they ask questions related to that picture using the active reading techniques. We also, of course, work closely with Parks and Rec. We're in Mecklenburg County Parks and Rec, as well as 2 nearby towns that are also part of Charlotte Mecklenburg Library. We work closely with them for story walks. And then just to share some more information, we strategically chose locations that are in book deserts in our county, where maybe there's not a library or families don't have as much access to books. So that's how we strategically chose where our story walks were. We get feedback from the public that they'd love more and more story walks. We change out stories about every 6 weeks. So we know that they're popular and doing well. We do celebrations periodically with community groups, preschools, schools nearby. And in those story walk celebrations, we have activities related to the books. We also relate them to our system initiatives in the library. So we have summer reading every summer, which we incorporated books related to our theme. We have community read in March. So this year coming up, we're focusing on art. So our books will tie into that community read theme. We also, during the pandemic, had virtual story walks, and we worked with the Charlotte Panthers and used their mascot, Sir Purr, to help us do some virtual story walks that we could send out as well, too. So we're very proud of these. We hope to continue to expand our story walks. And some other outcomes, you'll see that we have billboards out throughout the county to promote those. We do have virtual story walks in addition to the physical ones that I mentioned. Customers can post information on Facebook. We do have a QR code at the end of each story walk where families can enter a drawing for a free book every month. So that's just one way that we're working with our community and our partners. Next slide, please. We also are participating in the National Barbershops Books Program. Our Assistant Director of Outreach leads this program. We're at several locations throughout the county, and it's an opportunity for children to see themselves in books in the waiting room. So while they're receiving a haircut, they can enjoy a book, and ideally they leave them there, but if they take the book home, that's okay too. We just want them to have a chance to, where there may not have been books for young ones, get it when they've got a haircut in the past. And we've been pilot this initiative for over a year, and so we'll continue with that, and we're very fortunate to be one of the partners in that. Next slide, please. We also have community bookshelves. These are in places throughout our county where it's an opportunity for families to strengthen their literacy skills. They actually can pick up a book to take home to start their home library or build their home library. We put these in places, again, potentially book deserts in the community, high traffic areas that maybe in the past weren't literacy rich. We have a community bookshelf at International House, which is primarily Spanish-speaking Latino families. So we want to make sure that we offer bilingual books and have books available for them to take. Some of our families that are dealing with homelessness or transition, we've set up community bookshelves there as well. Some of our relatives, places for older teens who may have left home in our Safe Alliance. So this is another opportunity and place that we're working in the community. Next slide, please. And then our early literacy manager works primarily out in the community. She has developed a program over the last few years called Learning Together. It's a weekly literacy program serving lower income Hispanic and Latino families with infants to 4-year-olds. So it's a program out in the community that meets every single week of the year. I think maybe a couple of holidays they don't meet, but once a week at 2 different communities. They do story time, they do training for the parents as well to how to work with the children. They have time apart and together. But she wanted me to share, and I wanted to share that they do an environmental print lesson where they're really talking about how you can learn the alphabet and early start to learn to read by looking at environmental print. So they do things such as building a storybook based on environmental print, doing a scavenger hunt, collages during that time. And so it's been a really popular program, and it's expanding to a 3rd site this next year. And so that's another example of how we're trying to get literacy out in a space that maybe hasn't had that before. She works now at a couple of churches and uses their community space for meeting. Next slide, please. And then just I mean, everything that Law Library does in-house and out in the community really works on building literacy in everyday spaces. As I mentioned earlier, we work closely with Read Charlotte. We have active reading workshops, story times, and reading together workshops. So the youngest ones all the way to school age. We have our Reading Buddies program, all of our outreach in the community. We have a wonderful program called Reading in Color, where we go out to after school sites and read books for school age kids. Every week they are reading a chapter from a book where they can see themselves in that book. And then all of our locations work hard to have early literacy centers and stations with environmental print as well. So those are some of the things that are happening in Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library throughout our county.
Thank you so much, and good tips for other libraries who want to try to take on this kind of work and deepen their practices. I want to switch now to Dia. Dia, like Rachel, I'll give you a chance to get on screen. You know, like Rachel, you have an essential role within the city government in Milwaukee. Can you tell us about your city's commitment to creating learning opportunities in the everyday spaces and places, and how the city government works with other community institutions to make this effective? And as you share, can you also talk about, sort of tips and advice for other city governments to advance community efforts to support literacy-rich environments?
Hi, Priscilla and everyone. Thanks for having me today. Like the others, I always enjoy coming and sharing about what we're doing here in Milwaukee. And I direct the Office of Early Childhood Initiatives. And while this office, I am the sole employee of the office, I rely on a team of family advisory board members to really help me move this work. And the city, I'm very proud of for the last 6 years, the city has remained committed to investing in this office and the programs that is managed to produce with the help of so many wonderful partners within city government. Department of Public Works has committed to helping us put story paths in our parks. Our Milwaukee Public School Rec Department, while it's not under the city of Milwaukee per se, but very much also a partner that has also put funds into our spaces like our bus shelters and our story paths that are in 2 of our parks. Our library, of course, is a phenomenal partner, and we tend to do things together, especially over the summertime or this past September when we celebrated a National Literacy Month. And we had our own Read Across Milwaukee. Then they come on board and help provide books and whatnot for the readers. So the health department has been very instrumental in putting, I say, big dollars into revamping their offices, the WIC clinic waiting rooms and whatnot, and transforming them into what we call pop spots. And so all this is within city government, but also outside. We've had a local hospital that's transformed their waiting space. I'm sorry I don't have more pictures for you all today, and I'll talk about this picture that's up in 1 second. But the hospital have transformed their wait room. And the picture that you're looking at right now, the one on the bottom left or your right, is a large outdoor, call it a bus shelter. It once was a mobile library. Right now, it became a space that was just kind of barren. The glass that you see there was not there. And so whenever there's blight, we try to add something to it. So, but what's important about the picture that you're looking at is that is a part of our housing authority. So that is public housing. And I've heard the year 2015 twice today in some of the other talks. Well, in 2015, HUD gave funds to the city of Milwaukee and to our housing authority to create what's called choice neighborhoods. And part of the initiative was to, improve education amongst other things. And so we just announced this transformation over a week ago. That just happened. Mind you, though, it was a year and a half of discussion and planning and meeting with the residents that live in that area, showing them we had easels where they could kind of vote and talk about what they'd like to see in the space before we finally landed on what would go in the space and how we could use the space. So in that space, the outside are kind of still photos of families, and we talk about create mighty small moments. That is our big initiative out of my office, where we tell everyone everything I heard today. You all were creating mighty small moments in your cities. And really a mighty small moment is just what it sounds. It's an opportunity for parents and businesses to support parents as the first teacher, and to provide them with free, low-cost opportunities to engage children as young as 1, 2, and 3 years old. So, but on the inside of that space, each of those panels might have a game. The community wanted to see more things about gardening and harvesting. And so there's information about growing vegetables or matching. There's a QR code where you can present, do a little dance around. I'm a little teapot, but it's not really I'm a little teapot. It's I'm a little pear or something like that. We also have a QR code that you can scan, and it goes to, we have our own reading rainbow lady here in Milwaukee, Just Us in Books. And that woman, Danette Justice, she goes on location reading stories, dressed in costumes. She has a YouTube channel. And so we route families back to her channel so that they can hear stories. And she is responsible then for uploading that. And what's important about me saying that is everything that we do in Milwaukee, it really is a group effort. It takes a lot of hands to lift the work that I feel like that my office is leading. And we try to put forth the good work that others in our city are doing, like Danette Justice. And I'm thankful for Hackham and the Choice neighborhood that they invested in that space. So we are slated to have a feature story on this space late next week. So I'll be sure to share that out when that happens. The top screen that you're looking at is part of a wait area. And what I wanted people to see is, number one, we use the wall space as much as possible, right? Now, today there's, child-friendly furniture and colorful furniture and whatnot in there, and a bookshelf and things like that. But I wanted to focus on the wall space today, just to show how simple it could potentially be. That's a poem that you see right now, and maybe it looks very small, but when you're in that room, the words are quite big and kind of easy to read. And that poem was written by one of our local artists here in Milwaukee. The other items that you see on the wall, we work with our children's museum to figure out what should go on that wall, what can, a 2 or 3 year old kind of rough play with a little bit, and what can last. And they can be easily be taken down and replaced. You're looking at a whiteboard, the really large square that kind of has that face. It's called, I think, Afro Bets or something like that. And that was also done by a local artist. And so the kids can get dry erase markers and whatnot to color on that from the receptionist, which, by the way, at this location, they did report that there was a 17% increase on families, keeping their appointments and coming early to their appointments. Now, they didn't ask why. Maybe they come early to their appointments so that they can spend time in the space. That part I don't know, but to hear that there's that 17% increase. We also did some questioning and some research and found out that, over half of the parents in any of these spaces believe that we are contributing to them learning with their child and understanding that this is an opportunity to learn. And that's really important because Dr. Susan Newman, and I'd love to come back and really dive into her report. Last summer, we had her team come to Milwaukee and her research assistants, and they spent time at our pop spots and our bus shelters and whatnot, and really gave us a picture of what folks were saying. And they reported speaking to over 700 people about what is it like to be in these spaces, or what do they think about these spaces. And we learned one that 100% of people think that this is adding beautification, if nothing else, to the neighborhood. That's where we learned that over half believe that, you know, there's learning occurring. That's where we learned the 17% were coming to their appointment on time. But we also heard like some of the bus shelters might not be in the best space and where they'd like to see the bus shelters be. And what's interesting about that is in one of the spaces where we have a bus shelter, it's near a gas station, it's kind of a commercial area. And I happened to be in the area one day when some kids, probably looked like they were about 9 years old, were riding on their bike, and they saw me doing whatever I was doing in the space, and started to tell me about the story. They knew the story that was at that shelter. So, you know, when we think someone might not be paying attention, they are. And I just want to point out that's the point of these spaces. And I love the term someone said, you know, literacy, bringing literacy to life. And while we may not always be able to say definitively, you know, what is happening with children learning when they're in these spaces, certainly we know there's nothing happening if they're not in these spaces. And so the investment is just so important. And if there's another slide, you can go to that slide as well too. So, and these are just examples, and maybe you've seen them before, of our shelters and what we've had up in these spaces. But they weren't just those photos. We actually had stories in the shelters where you could hear about one little, the dad was Amin. And so it was Amin and Amin Jr. were taking a walk, and you could, you know, read each panel. Or there were I Spy games at the shelters. So right now where we are with the shelters we are in the process of taking them down, and we want to revamp them in the spring with something new and fresh. I'm thankful to our Milwaukee County Transit for setting aside shelters for us to be able to do that. I mean, again, none of this would be possible without the support of all these folks. And in Milwaukee, we just brought Imagination Library here this summer, or this fall rather. And so we're kind of kicking that off. And I feel like I'm not giving you everything that we're doing, because there is such a breadth of literacy and language opportunities for families in the city. Right now, you're looking at our Kids Are Sponges campaign, where, you know, maybe you've heard me talk about the fact we had a filter and families could then make themselves look like sponges. We try to engage families as much as possible. And so one of the things that we also do that goes along with the Mighty Small Moments is we create events for families so that they can come to spaces where they typically may not get to. It could be something like Chuck E. Cheese. It could be something like going to our lakefront. But whatever it is, my office has put funds towards bringing those families into those spaces. But we don't just let them play at first. We always have some sort of just workshop, inspiration, something where we're talking to the families about what it means. How does early talk build brains? How does questioning, you know, what does that do for kindergarten readiness and for lifelong learning? So they always have to hear our PSA, if you will, before we then turn them loose into that environment. And by the way, in that environment, we try to also, everything we do is to promote healthy brain development. So you're not going to see us serving the red stuff, you know, or, you know, soda and things like that. Even at Chuck E. Cheese, we get the milk out in the water. We open the salad bar and things like that. So we don't, you know, trick or treat. We do trick or read. And so we make sure children are having, you know, I probably doesn't sound as fun, but having fruits and books and things like that. So I just think it's important that we are looking at, for me, this is about early brain development and how literacy and language promotes that healthy development. And so we have to have those other pieces in as well too. So
Dia, we could listen to you talk all afternoon.
right.
All of you, all four of you, but I really want to get to the meat of the conversation, which is for others to ask questions. I'm sure what you, Rachel, Emily, and Jenny have said are sparking a ton of questions. And we do have some coming in the chat. So Emily, I know you're going to help facilitate. A couple are jumping out at me is because they kind of hang together. So these came in while Jenny and Rachel were speaking, but I think they apply to any of the panelists. And I'm going to read both of them. How have you engaged families and children who do not speak English as their first language, especially adults who may not speak English at all? And a second part of that question is, do you also work with refugee communities where parents do not speak English? What has been your experience with gaining their participation?
Thanks. I'll jump in to start, and others may have different answers. I will start by saying we do all of our work primarily in English, and we realize that that is not going to work for a good chunk of families. But we are really supporting learning to read the English language. And so we are teaching the English alphabet. And so those letters will have corresponding sounds in English. However, like when we did the direct mail campaign, we did also do it in Spanish. And so we sent that to families that we believed would be Spanish speaking based on the data from the health department and what we had. But the neighborhood we chose to pilot this project in a neighborhood of Philadelphia that did not have a high number of other languages spoken. And we did that on purpose because we were just testing it out. Having said that, then, when we work with our network of partners, we have partners who are more adept at doing multilingual programming, who serve families with various language backgrounds, and they then adapt these resources to their communities and their families. So I hope that's helpful. That's kind of been our approach, at least on the Philly ABCs project.
Does anyone else want to jump on that one before we go to another one?
I can jump in for a minute. So our Learning Together programs that are focused on Hispanic and Latino families, the presenters for those can speak in English and Spanish. So we have a huge demand for staff that speak other languages in our library system, more so than we even have, but we intentionally are hosting those in areas of the community where Spanish speaking families are. And then we also, there was a question about, we do work with the refugee agency. Our outreach department does, and a key part of that is building the relationships, even if the person may not speak Spanish, just having the same consistent person every week and making that relationship and starting to learn the language has been helpful for us.
Thank you.
And I'll just add to that, that in Milwaukee, part of what we do is we always ask if families need some sort of accommodation, so please let us know. And so as we have that request, then we're able to try and accommodate.
Great.
So there's a couple of questions too from Gwen and Kim. So first of all, how are you working with the school system? So I think let's start with Philadelphia, Read by Fourth. And then how are you collecting data from this ecosystem and measuring success? And Kim asked, can you share more about how you're measuring impact?
Sure. And at least I'm going to focus in on the Philly ABCs project because it's too broad a question to answer for Read by Fourth overall, unless I was going to take the rest of the webinar, which I don't want to do. Excuse me. But with the Philly ABCs project, the school district is at the table. They're a core partner of Read by Fourth. So they were a design partner in the project, and that meant that they helped identify the goals of the project, identify the metric we were trying to move, identify the need, helped identify the neighborhood that we were going into, and even gave input into the design of the resources. So for example, our first version of the Philly ABC's poster, which we thought was fantastic and was culturally on point, didn't necessarily utilize the most common sound associated with each letter. And even our current version, which has been updated with the input from literacy experts in the district, still has some issues from a literacy angle. In fact, I know many of you said you're glad to see G is for gritty. G is for gritty is actually a terrible example of the sound of the letter G. It's a sound of the letter of the blend of GR. So we updated almost the entire poster to make sure that the words that were associated with each letter was the most commonly used sound associated with that letter. And we've made an exception for gritty because he's so darn popular. But so that's how the district is really at the table with us. In terms of what we're measuring, the district uses an assessment called the STAR assessment that can measure alphabet knowledge. And so we have a request in to access the data of incoming kindergartners so that we can look at whether the incoming kindergartners are showing improvements over previous grades in their alphabet knowledge. We haven't actually gotten access to that data yet. And so to date, we are only really using qualitative focus groups from families, from teachers, from partners on kind of what they're seeing and what they're witnessing. But we're hoping to have some hard qualitative data in the near future.
Thank you. That's awesome. So I'm going to go to the next question. I know if you have more to share about that, please feel free to, but this is like the question from Bethany is like the perennial question. And I'll read her question, but then so her question is, how would you suggest someone go about trying to propose to a city to enact a similar program as to yours? Do you have any advice on how to get started in a general sense? And I will first say that the report that we've just put out is really meant to provide that sort of answer, and especially the recommendations we have for funders and city decision makers. But I'm going to ask all of you to also answer that question.
If people don't mind, I'll jump in first and try to be quick. I wouldn't actually suggest starting with that question. I wouldn't just go into like the mayor's office or city government and say, I want to do this. I would start with building a coalition of partners that represent different sectors of the community, get them aligned around the vision of increasing grade level reading or whatever your shared metric is, and have the group of partners identify as one of the core strategies needing the city to invest in transforming communities and identify examples like we've shared today of ways that other cities have done this. But coming in with a coalition of partners who already are seeing what's possible and taking this report is a better way to kind of start the conversation than just going to knock at the door and say, let's do this.
I saw some head nodding, and I'm going to call on Rachel because you're nodding vigorously.
Yeah, I think Jenny's right on the money there, and I think it's important that you have an excited funding partner. I know William Penn was very excited about pushing the playful learning movement forward, having someone at the city to spread this out a little more in education focused and non-education focused agencies, as well as in the agencies that control things like permitting, right of way, someone there that's ingrained in the system and can help grease the wheels. So that's the only thing I would add, but just having an excited and motivated funding partner in that coalition that Jenny mentioned.
And Dia, tell us your story.
Well, it's exactly what Jenny described, and I was not a part of that, but there were a group of folks from all walks of life, just as you said it, right, who then presented to our mayor and added the pressure to create an Office of Early Childhood Initiatives and hire a director and find those funds in the budget. And so now, even in my role, I feel like I lean on the Family Advisory Board because they are parents, they are now the constituents, to the elected officials to help move the message that I need to have to accomplish what I need to get done. And the last thing I'll say is leveraging. If I never knew what the word leverage meant, I know what the word leverage means now, and making sure everyone has a piece. And it doesn't matter if someone just did $5 or someone just was a thought partner. If it's a collective effort where everyone feels they have a piece of it, I feel like it's easier also to get across the finish line.
That's awesome. Okay, this is from an anonymous participant, but it's a really good question. Do you find it easy or challenging to get families to show up for your events or your training sessions? I will again mention the brief because there's a big part of the brief that is about involving families, involving communities, but I'd love to hear reactions. Emily, I want to go to you first on that one.
Sure. Well, I guess I'll start first about our Learning Together program. It took a little while to grow it, but now we have a waiting list. That's why we're expanding to a third location. We just realized what a huge need it is for Hispanic and Latino families to be able to come together. The other examples I shared, like story walks in parks, and community bookshelves and barbershop books. I mean, those have taken off. So I will say some of our programs that I mentioned kind of in the Q&A, some of our programs out in the community, our student success centers, we're working with teen volunteers. Those have taken a little while. So I would just say, don't give up, be positive and keep trying. But I guess it just depends on what segment of the population you're hitting on and who you're talking to. I will say that our learning together was very relationship focused, like making connections with those families by our early literacy manager. So it took her a while, but as soon as she built those relationships and realized that we were a trusted entity, we've just had huge waiting lists since then.
The trusted entity, that's the key right there. Anybody else share your tips on?
Okay, so here's the thing. Depends on, right, the need, the day, make sure nothing else is happening on that day in the city. Also it depends on, like, I'm burnt out on the word resource fair. Resource fair. I just feel like we're inundated with that. And I think it's really more about experiences for these families. And so how do we get them to come out, because they're going to be sharing in something with their children, which is why I use the carrot of, we're going to go to this experience and then we're going to talk about whatever it is I need them to understand and share, by the way, because the favorite thing is when they're able to see that they have value and when they come into the room as well too. So I would say focus on experiences. And the last thing I'm going to say is this: I've had to learn, usually our numbers are really, really good, but the last two events, they've been lower attended. And what I mean by that is probably less than 30 families. And what I had to learn was that the conversations were so rich. And it really is, you know, I know it's cliche, but it really is quality over quantity. So if you get a handful of parents and you can somehow keep connecting with them and parlay that relationship into something bigger and deeper and really have an impact, I think that's more important anyway. So
I mean, I could not agree with you more. And you can, but then those parents, that you can use their social capital to get other parents. So this has been great. And I want to thank the speakers that answered questions in the Q&A directly, but we do have a tight agenda here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Priscilla to keep us going.
Sure. And again, thank you all for your engagement in this. And now I'm really delighted to invite Amanda Charles from the William Penn Foundation, who, as we said, funded the community of practice and the production of the brief, to really sort of share her funder's perspective on all of this. You know, Amanda, just share a little bit about why you supported the work, the benefits you saw, you know, and just sort of your general impressions of what's happened in Philadelphia.
Sure. Thanks, Priscilla, and hello, everyone. Well, I think my fellow panelists have made the case for why playful learning should be implemented across the country. I want to take a moment to also make the case directly to funders. As the projects shown today demonstrate, playful learning can help children develop language and literacy skills, as well as increase the quantity and quality of adult-child interactions. In addition to literacy, playful learning can advance a wide range of goals, including ones related to math and STEM and social emotional development, as well as physical development. If your foundation has a focus on young children and families, consider if playful learning could be a tool in your toolbox to help achieve your goals. In addition, we found the process of creating playful learning installations and activities to be just as valuable as the product. We've leveraged the community engagement process to help community organizations build deeper relationships with more families. This process has also been an opportunity for families to connect with one another, which has led to a natural exchange of resources and tips for how families can support their child's development. So if funders are interested in supporting this work, there are a variety of ways to get started. Something important I've learned is that this work falls in a continuum and is really flexible. Similarly, there are several different ways to get started with this work. I would encourage funders on this call to partner with their communities to find the approach that works best for them. I think it's also helpful to know that there are organizations out there such as Playful Learning Landscapes Action Network, Kaboom, and Too Small to Fail who can help you get started. But what are some immediate next steps to help you get started and kind of engage your local funding community? First, I think it's important to ensure that everyone is on the same page when we say playful learning. Playful learning isn't the same thing as play. There's a science and a research behind playful learning and best practices for how to go about it. And you might need to educate stakeholders about what those are. And then similarly to what Jenny said, I completely agree. I think it's helpful to cultivate allies in this work. Some of our first champions in Philadelphia was the public library, Parks and Recreation, and of course, Read by Fourth. Once we had initial buy-in, we had a series of stakeholder meetings, and as the meetings progressed, word spread and the group got larger and larger. Philadelphia, as you can see, has learned a lot about playful learning over the past 7 years, which, as Emily said, has been recently summarized into a report by the Learning Agenda. I know I'm a little biased, but I would highly encourage everyone to take a look at it. Thanks, Priscilla.
Thank you very much, Amanda. And again, I personally thank you for the support you've given the Learning Agenda and for me in a previous role in moving this work forward and really helping spread the good word about this important body of work. Emily, I'm going to pass it back to you for our interactive session.
Yeah, this is exciting. So I have to say, I always tell Amanda she has one of the coolest jobs, that she gets to fund all these cool projects in Philadelphia and interact with. I just posted in the chat, Grantmakers for Education has a playful learning impact group. So there are funders out there. There really are. They're very interested in this work. They're very interested in the whole idea of literacy rich cities and what you all are doing. So now we have the awesome opportunity. There's 100 people on this call, at least, I think, I think a few people dropped off, but we want to hear from you. So it's your turn to share your ideas. We have a Padlet. I'm going to post it in the chat right now. Give me a sec. And what this is kind of the 5 conditions that are outlined in the report, but there's also a guiding question with each of the conditions. So we ask you to fill it out. So maybe the next slide really quickly. So this is your chance to come off mute, share your ideas in the Padlet, take a few minutes, and then, raise your hand or just start talking. You should be off mute now. So can you show the Padlet really quick? Talk through these questions. Okay, so, oh, look, you've already started doing it. So here are the 5 conditions. Why do I only see 4? Can you make it bigger? Oh yeah, you have to scroll over. That's okay. Are we coming back to the Padlet? Sierra, back to the Padlet. Anyway, so the idea is answer the question. So yeah, thank you, Sierra. So up top in blue is the 5 conditions, and then there's a guiding question underneath. So if you could all, I think you all know how to use Padlet, but you click the little plus sign, please include your name or your GLR community so we know who's responding to that question. So we'll take a few minutes for you to do that. And then we're going to ask you to have a conversation about it. So take a few minutes to think through these questions, respond how you like. So we want to hear from all of you. We know all of you. There was the question in the Q&A about how to start this, but we know all of you are committed to citywide literacy-rich environments. So think through how these questions are, what they look like in your community, in your city, in your county, in your neighborhood, and think through a few answers. So we'll give you just a couple minutes in quiet. And then we really want to have some interaction and invite you to speak up.
Yeah, this is Malai from CGLR. I'm guilty of putting the 2 examples that are there.
Yeah.
These are 2 fantastic examples from 2 of our CGLR communities. And so I won't call on you, but if you recognize your post there, feel free to unmute yourself and just share a little bit.
Please. So can you scroll up just a little bit, Sierra, so I can see the questions?
I can,
Yes.
I'm unmuting myself. I'm Stacy Pinney.
Hi, Stacy.
Oh, there we go.
Creator of the Little Red Reading House, which I shared as another example. We're in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And this house has inspired Reading Place affiliates throughout our whole community. So check out that website. And I just felt like it needed to be shared.
Thank you
That's
so much,
great.
Stacy.
I
Great
love
to
it.
see you.
Good to see everyone too.
Anybody else want to share how you are working with museums and other cultural institutions to create literacy-rich environments or parks or other organizations, obviously libraries. Anyone, raise your hand or just speak up.
Hey, Emily, it's Marie O'Brien from the Learning Alliance and Moonshot Moment in Indian River County, Florida.
Awesome.
We did a project. I'm looking for a picture of it that I could upload to Padlet, but a few years ago with our museum, we took, the museum found original artworks that they owned, and we paired them with each of our 13 elementary schools and created these giant masterpieces that are on campus. Most of them are right when you walk into the school, so you have to go past, and it's probably 15, maybe 10 feet long, but it has the masterpiece, and then it has different questions based on a child's age that you would ask so you can interact with that artwork. And if I find a picture I have a newer computer, so when I find the picture, I'll upload it to Padlet.
Thank you.
That sounds
That's a great
awesome.
example, Marie.
Love
Also,
it.
I want to
Yeah.
do a shameless plug for Moonshot Moments, that there'll be our next feature community in our conversation that we're having in December. Thanks for coming on and unmuting, Marie, and just sharing that out.
You're welcome. Thanks for
Hi,
doing this.
this is Charlene from Dorchester County in Maryland. So we have something that we do twice a month. It's called a reading social, and we do 3 locations. One is at our public library, community center that is.
Can we show the video? I don't see who's speaking.
This is Charlene from.
I know. I'm asking Sierra.
Her video isn't active. Her video is not active.
Oh, sorry, Charlene, you're off video. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So we work with our town, one of our local towns, community center, and they allow us to do that once a month. And then we do 2 in the city of Cambridge. One is in a business where they allow us to use their conference room, and the other is in the substation of our local police department there, which is also on the same campus of a out of school.
Uh-oh. Charlene, you're going in and out a little bit, but we thank you so much for sharing. It sounds awesome. So looks like we have a couple more that posted. So please speak up and share. So scroll up to that question again.
Blankets or tent, bring our books to I'm sorry, I was on mute. I don't know if you heard me. So we do a reading social twice a month, and we work with the town of Hurlock to use their community center. So they allow us to use that space for free. And then we have 2 in the city of Cambridge. One is at a local business that allow us to use their conference room. And the other is at a substation from our local police department that is also on the campus of one of our out of school time programs. But we also take the reading social mobile. So when there are different events around the county, we'll pack up everything and we'll go to that event and we'll set up the reading social. And then in the month of December, we do blankets and books. So we do a blanket campaign in November. We have people donate blankets. And then in December, when we have our reading socials, when children come to participate, they get to take a blanket as well as their book with them. So we just try to be creative and with, just trying to encourage to get parents to come out, and then also take in activities to parents because they're not going to always come to us. And we leave books with all of our out of school time programs and also in like laundromats. And someone said something about salons and barbershops, and that is actually on our agenda to discuss on Monday. So I really appreciate some of these ideas because some of these things that we hadn't thought about. So definitely we'll be bringing them to our meeting on Monday.
Thank you so much. That was awesome to hear, Charlene. And then Carolyn, I see you're posting in the chat. Would you like to speak up and share what you have going on?
We have a lot going on. I don't have my video on, but
okay.
We have this program called Louisiana Reads, which does a lot of work in bridging the gap between in-school learning and out-of-school learning. And so, our organization primarily started off as a professional learning organization, but since 2021, we really have a focus on on family engagement. And so our partners range from schools that are really excited to have our team at their literacy nights, because, you know, usually it's just about sort of these generic events, but to have some custom-made workshops that are either about, you know, how do you make sense of literacy assessment data that came home, or about, okay, you know, what are some simple things that you can use from around your house, or what you see in your environment, that you could then use to do activities that align with the science of reading, but not using those the jargon that is associated with science of reading, right? So it's not about, we're not saying phonemic awareness or, you know, things like that that may make it more intimidating to families, but then still introduce those ideas.
Carolyn, can you just remind us where you're calling from? So we have Sarah DeBacher, who's also in Louisiana, would like to connect with you to remind us where like who you're affiliated with.
For sure. I'm with the Center for Literacy and Learning. So we are
Awesome.
a based national nonprofit. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I think Sarah wants to connect with you, so hopefully that can happen.
Perfect. Looking forward to it.
She's with Primetime Family Reading. Okay, so I want to go to this next question because I see some people posted. What does it look like? Do you have literacy-rich engagement, literacy opportunities in barbershops, laundromats, bus stops, waiting rooms? I'd love to hear who posted there about that. Uplift Literacy, are you still on with us?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So we have a program that we call Books Around Town. And it's basically, the idea is we take gently used books that have been donated to us and we put them in this bin, and we want to just increase free access for everyone, and children specifically in locations where children may frequent, such as laundromats, barbershops, hair salons.
And Chelsea, what town are you in? What city?
I'm in Miami, Florida.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. So we drop them off at pediatrician offices, dentist offices, I've dropped them off at veterinarian offices, anywhere where a child may frequent, where you know, even if you somewhere where you may not think they may go, but the idea is just to, you know, increase access available to children and families everywhere that they go. We do have other programs, Uplift Literacy ourselves, like we have a Reading Pals program where we support, we offer tutoring and pre-K through 3rd grade students. We have about 15 partner sites at the moment. We also do family engagement events about 1 to 2 times a month. That's my wheelhouse, where the idea is just to do them all throughout different areas of Miami, where we provide parents with like a literacy workshop. We do a story time, a craft activity. We try to bring out an ice cream truck, you know, when available, and just, yeah, we just keep on pushing through and try to make sure all families have access to literacy, and, you know, just support them in any way that we can.
So I'm just going to say something really quickly because I'm loving hearing about this. And we, you know, in Philadelphia, we put out this brief and we are excited about the reactions and the response. And we encourage all of you. I mean, I know we had the wonderful support of the William Penn Foundation, but we encourage you all because this is such important work that you're all doing. So see if you can get your information out there. And maybe it's not a full brief, maybe it's an infographic, or maybe you can host a local webinar or something like that. But I just strongly encourage you to take our brief as a model or something you can replicate, maybe not in the exact same way, but whatever way makes the most sense to get the word out about your important work in your communities.
No, this is the first time I've attended one of these webinars. And
wow.
I feel like I've learned so much information, and we're also in the works of doing our own similar like literacy trail. We're trying to get that out in parks. So I learned so much information that now I can go take back to my team and say, look, I learned, look at what they've done. Like maybe, you know, we can incorporate that or get some new ideas that we can use as well. So thank you. Thank you so much.
And so I'm just going to share, Wesley asked about, you know, compiling these ideas, and Malaya already said she's going to do it. I was going to say, just read the brief, but Malaya.
No, I'm on it.
But everybody will get a follow-up message with the slides and the recording and this link to this this Padlet. So you'll have all this information. And then I'm not exactly sure. I'll talk to Malaya about what she has planned. Oh, and here's our engagement poll. So we take these very, very seriously. I know we've lost a few people, but there's still a bunch of you, 80 people still here. So please take a minute and give us your feedback. We really take these seriously. I'm telling you, we talk about them each week. We analyze the reactions that we got. So please tell us how your reaction to this through the poll. So please take a few minutes. It should be right in front of you right now to complete the poll. Okay, so there was another person who posted in the chat and I lost it. See, this is why I always say don't post in the chat because it gets lost.
It's Tom. It's Tom from
No,
Cobb.
Louise Weiner. Would you like to speak up from Learn Lead?
Sure. Learning and Leadership in Families is a nonprofit that sunset in 2015. And I just put up a website because I want to get the materials and the learning model available to people who are working on exactly what you're working on. And what we did was we basically translated museum education strategies using visual vocabulary from museums, so line, shape, color, etc., that color and pattern actually, that everybody really, that adults know, and helped both parents and teachers use them to start conversations with their children simply by walking down the street and finding patterns of doors, patterns of windows, patterns of rooftops, counting them, sorting them, making stories up about what's the difference between a front door and a back door, or why is it one door little and one door big? So all kinds of imaginative things, and followed that up with family activities at schools where they started after the extended day program. Family was interpreted as anybody the child considered family. We started with a pizza supper so that people could physically get there and bring whatever children and not have to worry about babysitters or fixing dinner. And one of the comments that was made in our fits so well with what we did. That is, they would take, for example, let's take the door example. Every families were at tables with plenty of blocks. And they built, after we talked about what's a door, families built their own door, and then families shared with the rest of the people assembled what their door meant and what it was. There's a whole variety of activities that are useful in museums, useful in cities, useful in playgrounds and parks. And I encourage you to take a look at the website, take what's useful, and give us some feedback.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, thank you so much, Louise. I'm going to ask Sierra, if you could put all our speakers back on really quick so I can say a last thank you, because we're out of time. And we do encourage you, we have webinars every Tuesday. These Crucibles of Practice are once a month. So the next one will be December, second week of December, second Tuesday in December. So thank you to all of our awesome speakers, Jenny, Dia, Emily, Amanda, Priscilla, you're an incredible, and Rachel, she's back. And Priscilla, you're an incredible facilitator. So thank you. And Malai, thank you too for all of your awesome leadership of the Crucible of Practice and leadership with our GLR communities. So please join us again. Thank you for an incredible discussion today. So exciting to hear about what's going on in your communities and that there's chances for kids to learn everywhere they go. So thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of the day and a good rest of the week.